the wedding day is not solely about the bride. It is also about the groom and his buddies.
It's nice to hear you say that.
And while we know that it is heavily directed and guided by the female members, we definitely like to make it enjoyable and memorable all along the day, the planning, everything for the guys as well.
Welcome to CR Conversations, hosted by Ryan and Christina Palma of CR Photos.
We're professional photographers who survived the unpredictable and grueling path that took us from rudimentary dreamers to fully self-employed business owners. From sleepless nights of editing to daring leaps of faith when quitting 9-to-5 jobs, we kept pushing for the dream to become reality, and we did it together every step of the way.
Amazingly enough, our marriage also survived that journey.
In our 15 plus years in the industry, we've acquired a wealth of information that goes far beyond camera settings and marketing do's and don'ts.
We've also piled up countless stories, affectionately called Uncle Bob stories.
We'll be leaking those one episode at a time.
Don't worry, names and places have been changed to protect the guilty.
So welcome to CR Conversations. We hope you're ready to take a deep dive into life behind the lens and so much more. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of CR Conversations. Today, I'm excited for what we have to share because it's going to be heavily reliant on Ryan's expertise because we are talking about the guys on the wedding day. And in a very heavily female-dominated industry, one from the photographer's standpoint, there is a heavy imbalance of female photographers over males. I think it's super awesome that we provide, the male and female perspective of a wedding day, and that Ryan is able to make the guy's part just as special as the girl's part. And what I mean by that is everyone's kind of like, oh, it's the bride's day. It's her day. And not everyone, but often the groom and the guys are a little bit of an afterthought. And you're like, all right, boys, you just fall into line, do what you have to do. Yep. One of the major misconceptions is that guys don't value their wedding photos.
Definitely.
And I think that's completely false. And we've experienced that in, many, many years of photographing guys. Guys and girls just view it very differently on the actual wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
Girls are like...
And leading up to it.
Yeah. Girls are like, we will do whatever we need to do to get these photos for our friend. We will do whatever we need to do to, fix however much time we've lost with hair and makeup. Like, we are on board. We're in this, on the wedding day, before the wedding as they're planning, where guys is a little bit different in that they maybe are a little more quiet in the planning process. Some guys are more involved. They're kind of like, we'll show up on the day of and do what the photographer tells us. But the flip side is when the guys get their photos, they are super excited.
Yeah, it's a matter of going about it in two different ways.
Mm-hmm.
The girls, like you said, are all in. If I could sum it up into one simple scenario, you've done this 1,000 times. Every time you shoot with the girls, you'll have the girls in a group setting, and then you're like, all right, everybody, fake laugh.
Yeah.
And girls are just like all in, and you look at a photo of a girl's fake laugh, and it looks completely natural, completely on board. Well, guys, there's no way you can try that sort of thing with guys unless you are openly intentional about that, and you're at that point making fun of what a girl photo shoot would look like.
Yeah.
For guys, it has to be genuine. It has to be they're literally tricked into enjoying what they're doing. And I say tricked because for many of them, they're looking forward to the party, the reception. They're not thinking as the girls are like, this is a big part of the day. This is an enjoyable part of the day. They're more thinking like this is a stepping stone. This is something that we have to get through to get to the reception. And as Christina said, after though, you realize how valuable they are and
that they actually did enjoy doing them. And I will say that obviously in our case, and I think that's because we do have Ryan who understands all of that and makes the photo taking just as enjoyable as, doing your intros into the reception for the guy. So today's episode is going to be all about making the wedding day, the whole photo process, just as enjoyable and fun from start to finish for the guys.
Mm-hmm. All right. So as I said, for the guys, it's got to be genuine. And in that regard, the biggest thing that you have to do as a shooter is to get into the group and find what makes them tick. Every group has kind of like a core theme that represents them. They might all be athletes. They might all be gamers. They might all come from the same street growing up. So like elementary school friends. There's something that is generally the glue that brings a group together. You kind of got to infiltrate that, play on that, and work out getting their personality to come out.
And you can kind of start on that even in your meeting processes before the wedding. So we always do an engagement session before. That's a great opportunity to start small talk, figure out a little bit about the groom, a little about his friends, like how are they going to be on the wedding day? Are they going to be excited? If you have a little bit of knowledge of the guys beforehand, that will go a long way into getting into that group on the wedding day.
Yeah. And as you said, as you usually ask, like, how are the guys going to be? Sometimes a groomsman will say, like on the engagement day, or you'll know as soon as you walk into the room, all right, these guys are already having enough fun.
Yeah.
On the flip side, sometimes you got to be the one to kind of rein in that fun, focus that fun. I always say it, and I truly believe it. As I say it, I'm not here to stop the party. I'm here to be a part of the party, keep that party flowing. But many times either I will bring a little bit more fun into the party, or sometimes I'll bring a little bit more direction into the party.
Structure.
Yes.
We'll structure this party.
Yep. And so it's kind of just all day long, directing, guiding, babysitting a little bit, but in a way that's like genuine. You cannot force the guys to get into the photos like you can with the girls. And when I say force, girls, there's no forcing. You cannot coerce boys to look genuinely fun and happy if they're like, this is stupid, this is lame.
Yeah.
So it's just a completely different way of going at the guys. And like I said, the first thing you got to do is you got to get in there and you got to kind of infiltrate. I know it'll be much more difficult if you're a girl, but you really got to kind of like get into that bro talk and stuff with them and have some fun.
But I will say this, as a girl, if you're a girl and you're like, okay, how do I, like Ryan said, go in on their bromance and not be weird? Like, I've also seen that where it is weird when a girl tries to do that. Obviously, being photographers
Trying too hard.
The two of us, Ryan's always with the guys, you know, I'm with the girls. I've experienced seeing like that awkwardness when like a videographer has like tried it and it's very cringy and the guys immediately shut down. So it is a little bit harder. I'd say don't push it. If you're a girl, don't push it too much. Like let them have a little bit of fun, but also don't try and be a guy, and that can swing in the other way and they're gonna be like, what is wrong with this girl? You know? So
I would say one of my tricks is redirecting the attention. Every time I'm shooting, I will try to get the boys interacting with each other, not so much with the camera, even the groom. As I'm shooting with him, one of the things I'll say to the guys as they're getting ready, I'll be like, guys, your job now is to make fun of him if he gets a little too serious, if he gets a little too uncomfortable. So we've worked with maybe 2 models in our entire time shooting weddings, like 2 actual models. And on those days, your job is similar to
very easy.
The lady's job, where it's like, all right, man, just take it away. I'm just going to sit here and click. But in most cases, they're uncomfortable standing in front of the camera. So what you're generally doing is trying to get the guys to, you know, as they're doing what you're directing, make fun of them a little bit, make them laugh, make that genuine laughter. I guess it's in a similar way. It's when a mom shows up to like a senior photo shoot and she's trying to make her son or make their child laugh. They're trying to be serious, but then somebody says something and all of a sudden it breaks. And so you got that laughter, and in between that laughter, you can get that quick. All right, straight face for this one, turn over your profile to the left towards the light, and you can get both. There's a whole lot of funny stuff that doesn't get used for the serious ones and some happy ones in between. And
the pro of kind of going back and forth is that, and like Ryan said, having the guys make fun of the groom, or like even Ryan will poke fun at them, is you're looking for a genuine, real smile. So I literally had a meeting this week and the bride and the groom both were like, you know, the groom, I struggle. He's like, I cannot do a normal smile in front of the camera. And she was like, he has this beautiful smile. And it's so hard to capture because as soon as you put a camera in front of him, he's like, I turn into a different person. And I reminded them, comforted them, be like, hey, we're looking for those in-between moments. And that's why, because when you get someone to laugh genuinely, our camera's going. And that's where, you know, people are like, oh, you got that real smile, as opposed to his like goofy or shy or nervous smile. And that's why flipping back and forth okay, we're going to have some fun. We're going to do some serious one. you're always going to get what you need when you take that approach.
Yeah, you reminded me again. You always have to be ready to shoot because it is, again, the stuff in between. The stuff that they don't think is the photo part, that's usually the photo part when they're like goofily laughing with each other. So one of the funny tricks I do is I generally use some of the same prompts I use in an engagement shoot with the guys with one of their groomsmen. And as the guys are getting ready, let's start at the beginning of the day when they're getting ready in their room and stuff. So much simpler than the girls. You don't have all the makeup all over the place. You just put your pants on, button up, and we're out the door. It's really a completely different setting than the girls. But what I'll do is I'll tell the guys, the groomsmen, keep up with your groom, especially if you're the best man or the father, and you're going to be, helping out with getting dressed and stuff. As they're like putting the final touches on, throwing the jacket over, the groomsman is there, the best man or something. I'll tell him to say, as he's straightening the tie, I'll say, look deep into each other's eyes. And it just guarantees a laugh. And they don't even have to talk in that moment. As soon as they make direct eye contact, they break and there's genuine laughter there. I'll say, whisper something sweet into his ear, whisper words of wisdom. And no guy has ever had a word of wisdom in that moment. It's just something stupid into their ear and stuff. And so again, you're getting candid laughs. And then right in between, after they got comfortable, after their shoulders drop back and like the tension is gone, then you're like, all right, guys, just stand right there, look towards the camera. And then you've got a natural stance, posture, facial expressions. The tension on the face is the thing that has to go. And generally it's there. You got to break it down with just this kind of banter that guys do.
And sometimes all of this is very rare. All of this will not work. Sometimes you just have a guy or a set of guys, and we say this all the time. The bride and groom will always reflect the attitude of the wedding party and the wedding day, right? So if you have a groom who doesn't matter what you do, he is not going to be into photos. You're going to crack some joke. He's like, nope. You're going to do something serious. He's like, nope. Don't take that as in like you're doing a bad job. You will get a lemon every once in a while. And you just have to essentially get the photos you have to deliver and let it be because there's only so much you can do.
And I would say, yes, you will get somebody that's very difficult. Obviously, we've got people, we come away from every wedding and are like, wow, that was the easiest day or that was really difficult. Sometimes a guy is incredibly nervous leading up to it. And, you're making jokes or the other guys are making jokes and he can't even focus on him. He's not even hearing. Everything's going over his head because of what's going on inside of him. And I've found that a lot of times switching it, especially with the groom, not the groomsmen, because they're just carefree, but with the groom, just turning it over to sincerity. Start to talk to him about what's going on and kind of being like his therapist in the moment. Because all his buddies aren't going to be like over there to just give him that sincere conversation. So you're kind of alone with him one-on-one and you have these private interactions and stuff where you're coaching him into these feelings that like, man, this is awesome. This is a special day. What you're feeling right now is awesome. And it's just one way or another earning their trust, whether it's, through the most common way of just being another guy and joking around with them, or actually being like somebody that's sincere with them and understands what they're feeling at the moment and just relating to them. So. Yeah.
And on that sincere side, sometimes it's a lot easier for a guy, groom, to talk about what he's feeling with a complete stranger, which, we don't show up as complete strangers on the wedding day, but they're a lot more comfortable talking to Ryan as opposed to maybe even one of their groomsmen. Just like it's easy for us to sit down on a plane and talk to a complete stranger, he might feel
really? That's easy for you?
Easier than talking to somebody I know. But that element, like Ryan said, I'm glad we brought that up. It can actually, like Ryan said, help calm the nerves and actually be like, okay, yeah, I am excited about this. And they might be a little bit embarrassed to talk about it with their groomsmen. And Ryan can kind of, like you said, come into that spot and be the person the guy just needs to be like, okay,
and that might be an easier way for the girl, a female photographer, to kind of break in a little bit, just to, be there with, in that supportive ear.
Yeah. So again, just kind of goes back to feeling out the groomsmen and the guys and just knowing which way to direct in those moments. So now that we've moved past the getting ready and you've gotten to know, what type of feel this group of guys is, this next part is what Ryan will do, like what sort of prompts or things that he will do to make the actual photo session part of the day enjoyable for the guys.
Yeah. So this is what I would call like bringing out the personalities. And a lot of times I will start with the fun photos because every single person's got to get like their comfort level. It's almost like warming up for a game. They got to get warmed up. So generally what I will do is the boys one-on-one photos first. Not always, but when it works out for me, that's what I do first. The guys will come up, they'll do a formal photo with the groom, and then they'll do something, I always say, reminiscent of like the 7th, 8th grade locker room, something, stupid. But I also try to balance it with like, hey, grandma's going to see the
Yes.
photos. So like, let's keep it balanced. And that's something
Also,
I've had to work out over the years because guys really go south very quickly.
Yes, you have to remind them. The biggest thing is like, remember, grandma's going to look at your wedding album. Also, my wife is going to be editing these photos. So don't do anything.
Yeah, that's not too much of a deterrent there. They're like, okay, I'll give her, It's more just, yes, trying to bring them not to 100% crazy, but
have some fun.
Somewhere in between 70 and 80%. Yes, I'm trying to get everybody comfortable. And then the next thing is I'm doing the group photos. And again, in most of the poses that we do, they're geared for a formal and a fun shot. And whether I do the formal ones first or the fun ones, it's kind of dependent on the group. You got to do your standard shots where guys are, at the bar putting out the vibe. It's like the straight lineup, everybody's arms over the shoulder.
Putting out the vibe? I've
If
never
you can
heard of
quote
it.
that movie reference, you get an A+ from me.
I don't know what that is.
Well, that's a guy movie right there.
Okay.
So guys generally understand that one or know that one, but perhaps as we get into the 2025,
The Hangover?
30s, Dumb and Dumber.
That would be my next one. Something with Jim Carrey.
Generally, again, what you're trying to do is get everybody, I don't know if introspective is the word, like you want them to turn their attention towards each other. Again, not so much on the camera. They always got to think of the camera being there, but towards each other. So whether that's huddles, whether that's movement, toast would be something that you might do inside the getting ready. That would be that kind of theme, but you're always like, all right, as you're prompting that, you're also prompting that ready to have them facing towards the direction that you want them to be lighting wise. So you can't just throw the idea out there and not have an idea of where you're going to go, but you're kind of prompting these ideas. Like I'll often do a huddle with the guys, and that's, let's get in the huddle. The groomsman is calling the plays, and everybody's kind of in this over the shoulder thing, and they're barely looking at the camera, but they're in, if you think of it like a stage, when you're on the stage, you're always thinking stage left. You're thinking of the audience while you're playing into this role that you're in.
Yeah. With each one of these things, you do have to provide a little bit of direction. You can't just be like, all right, guys, get in a huddle. Because
don't just get into a circular huddle and you'll be on the outside of it.
And you're like Ryan said, the lighting's important, all that. So they will need a little bit of coaching, where, all right, do this way or leave a spot for me. But I think overall, it's like, just let them have a little bit of fun. Let them do what they want. And of course, Ryan's always ready to shoot in between those moments and that goofing around and all that stuff.
Yeah. In movement, I would say like movement started from the beginning. We always did this walking shot, but we've kind of evolved in different ways of doing that has elicited a little bit more interaction.
Yeah.
Or symmetry in the photo. So it's not just a random walking in one. We've come up with different things that involve movement, involve them looking at each other. And I won't give away my favorite one. I think it took a second to get Christina on board with it, but I found something that for me as a guy and from the guys that I've photographed, it ends up being one of their favorites. I'll say this. We talked about like why photos are important to the guys. In the beginning, yes, they are not on board as the girls are, but afterwards, it's almost like when we do our family photos, Christina generally does the prep work for it. I am obviously fully committed. I get there, I'm ready to go. But those photos afterwards, the meaning that they have to me it's just as powerful as it is to her, I believe.
Yeah.
But the guys, as much as, of course, their photos with their bride are forever going to be important. Those photos with their groomsmen, I just talked to one of our groomsmen that we photographed this past summer, and he said the importance of having those photos with the guys that he might never have in the same group setting ever again was incredibly important to him. And for me, a photo of each of my guys in their personality coming through is powerful. And it's like, if I have a buddy's photo where you can see that reaction, that facial expression from him that you remembered your entire childhood, your college years together, that's something that you'll cherish forever. Yeah. And it's a weird thing that guys, yes, they won't put in the effort up front, but the value that it is to them afterwards, I think is almost, it's powerful.
It's priceless.
Yes.
Because they will value it. And I think the overarching theme of the session portion with the guys is, and I know this because I work hand in hand with everybody in the timeline, I actually give Ryan and the guys way more time to take their photos than the girls, to allow them to get in a spot where they're all comfortable, they're having a good time. They can kind of joke around and not be like, okay, guys, we got 15 minutes. We got to get through this, because those are not going to represent the personality of the guys if they're under pressure, on top of the fact that they don't genuinely like having their photos taken. So to get all these things Ryan's talking about, the huddles, all these little, set up things, but let them do their thing, they just need more time. And I know that can be problematic in a wedding day, right? The timeline is tough, but if you take that approach and just let the guys get into the space they want to, like Ryan said, they're not only going to enjoy it, but when they get those photos back, they're going to look back on the shooting time with such fondness because it was so fun actually capturing these photos. And now that is a core memory for them, as opposed to like, okay, guys, you have to, get your act together. You have to get your photos taken in 15 minutes. So having the time to enjoy the photo session on the day is super important for the guys as well.
If I could say something, I don't have the statistics to back this up, but I believe that the groom's enjoyment of a day has a great benefit to you going forward in terms of word of mouth and getting somebody to come back to you. Now, think of it this way. Girls have been spending their whole lives and they're looking at shooters and flowers and cakes and stuff preparing for a wedding day. So it's almost like there is a huge pool of different photographers that they are thinking of, they've seen online. If a guy has one photographer that stuck out to him when it's his turn to, get married, and he was a part of a wedding before as a groomsman, he's like, I remember that photographer.
Right.
That guy was great. He's only going to have one photographer probably that he'll think of like, that guy was a lot of fun. And I do believe that it's one of those areas that we greatly benefit from because of our guy experience.
Yeah.
They have that core memory. That guy with the beard or whatever you remember.
Let's be honest, it's the beard. Everyone loves Ryan's beard, so of course they're gonna love their photo time with him.
Yes, guys. I think the whole point of this is don't neglect guys. Don't think the guys don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
In this, because yes, we both know that the industry is heavily female driven. However, the guys do matter, as we know.
Yeah, and it's just their investment, I feel like, comes after the fact. Like Ryan said, and we said at the beginning, the day of might be a little harder, but once they get those photos, they're very appreciative of them and they do love them. So they'll love them even more if you make that part of the day fun for them.
So we've been talking about the personality, the fun. You must remember, and this has been something that I've had to work on over the years because I'm a boy and I get into that boy mode and have a lot of fun with the guys. You got to get those serious photos. And again, when you've done the fun ones and you just switch real quick and say, hey, let's get a serious one. Everybody focus. Guys can jump into that. That's
most of the time.
Most of the time. You always have that one guy. And
Yeah.
I would say this, that's something that you have to be vigilant about. If you want to separate yourself from the average when it comes to the guy photos, at least, you've got to be attentive to that one guy that is going to push the envelope every single time. You got to bring him back in. He might be the guy that's making everybody have a lot of fun. Finger pistols might be going a little bit too much. He might have his tongue out a little bit too much.
Yep.
So there are many moments where you're going to be needing a serious...
a little rein them all in and be like, all right, guys, just give me 2 minutes of seriousness. And that might have to happen more with some groups than others. But as you're shooting, I'll say this, as you're shooting, making sure that one person is actually doing what they're supposed to, because there are lots of photos on our computer where everyone's doing what they're supposed to, except from the one guy who's...
You're like, what?
And you're like, you didn't notice it. It's like a little child with him either, I'm not even going to say all the things that have come across my screen.
Yeah.
Be looking in the camera in the moment as well for that one crazy little guy.
Because this is the thing. It'll happen once or twice and that's okay. But when it's that same guy in every single photo, it gets really annoying. And I know it's annoying for her to edit. I'm sure it's annoying for the bride when she comes back and she says, look at Jimmy's face in every single photo.
Yep,
And sorry, Jimmy, whoever you are, but I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, but yeah, you'll upset a bride if you
ruin all the photos with your goofiness.
So the last couple things we'll mention is the ceremony and the reception. One of the unique things about the ceremony is brides and bridesmaids don't actually see the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
They're tucked away, hidden. And as the groomsmen come out, the groom comes out, the officiant comes out. Those are parts that they never actually see. So in that thought alone, it lends to the importance of getting a good photo of the guys as they're coming up the aisle or as they're coming in.
And sometimes we think, oh, these are just the guys. And I know every ceremony is put together differently. Sometimes the guys come in from the side or they're already there. Sometimes guys come one up the aisle. And again, like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, we know that weddings are very heavily, it's all about the bride and her bridesmaids. But like Ryan said, the girls aren't seeing it, the brides aren't seeing it. So don't, slack off just because it's the boys starting everything. Because guess what? The girls and the bride, they want to see the part that they weren't there for.
Yeah, they're later going to be like, oh, I didn't see you guys look so handsome coming up the aisle, whatever. So yeah, that's an important part. And then guys often do the dap, the handshake as they come up. Maybe you've got 2 cameras on your hip. If you're able to get a little bit of that action right there, that's obviously, again, it's a genuine moment for the guys. So if you can capture that.
Yeah, that's important for sure. And then obviously, be ready for that groom's reaction, bride coming down the aisle. But those little things in between, even some of the groomsmen come up the aisle and they're doing pistol guns or, now they're handing out beer cans, like people's excitement. I feel like the last couple of years when guys come up the aisle because they're being
guys are getting a little bit more work. Yeah.
And so they are getting a little bit more attention and getting the people's reaction as the guys comes out is also.
And does it not surprise you that sometimes you get more tears from the guys' side than you do from the girls?
I feel like especially as of late, there have been like groomsmen just sobbing.
Yeah,
people
which
come
is
through, which is so
pretty
sweet.
cool. So be prepared, obviously getting that documenting. And then finally, this is more for the groom, I would say, to be cognizant of, aware of leading up to the reception. When it gets to the dance floor and stuff, especially if you're a dancer, those photos of you and your buddies on the dance floor is something that you'll enjoy. Again, that's going to be everybody is relaxed. Everybody's having fun. So at some point, I would encourage everybody to be like, round all the boys up.
Yeah.
Let's get to the middle of the dance floor and have some fun. And your photographer is going to be there for that.
Yeah. The dance floor photos of the guys and the girls, of course, but the guys is always super fun because clearly, they've gotten all the important stuff.
This is what they're here for.
Yeah, and they've got that liquid courage running through their veins and they're having a great time. And those candid photos are super fun and super important. So we always encourage, the guys, like, don't wait, an hour or 2 to get on the dance floor. No, like, just grab your guys, get on there, have some fun so your photographer can capture it. But the wedding day is not solely about the bride. It is also about the groom and his buddies.
It's nice to hear you say that.
And while we know that it is heavily directed and guided by the female members, we definitely like to make it enjoyable and memorable all along the day, the planning, everything for the guys as well.
So this was a message to photographers, encouragement to them, but also to your brides. Sometimes brides don't understand that there is a little bit of a emotional, genuine heart behind your groomsman, your groom, and they do care as well. It's just, you're not going to see it. It's either whether they're too ashamed to admit that they enjoy it, but you've got to get them into a genuine, happy state to enjoy and get some natural photos.
Yes, which I feel like Ryan does so well at that he's like best friends with everyone by the time we leave. True story. Got a shout out during a best man's toast on a wedding day.
I think there's been a couple
for how much the guys loved their photo shoot with Ryan. So we don't say all this having not experienced exactly what we're talking about. So in other words, you can take it to the bank, folks.
All right. So one of our faithful listeners has mentioned that we haven't shared an Uncle Bob story.
Yes.
A little bit. So,
but since we're talking about groomsmen, let's have these Uncle Bob stories be about Uncle
boys.
Groomsmen. So these fun stories come to you courtesy of your
boys.
groomsmen.
So real quickly, the things that you don't see, brides, there's 2 stories. One that I didn't even recognize, Christina did.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then there's one that I recognized that she didn't.
Right.
So Every single guy. This is like the oldest joke on a wedding day is when it's time to hand the ring over. The guy goes to his pockets and he's like, and it's always a joke.
Yeah.
And, get some chuckles. Well, this one wedding, the guys are all at the front of the aisle. Bride had not started walking, and all of a sudden the realization that they did not have the rings with them.
For real
and
this time.
Talk about like panic on the faces. Fortunately, it was not the longest run to the room where the rings were.
Yep. Guys ran
sprinted,
out. Yep.
got the rings, got back in line.
I don't think the bride ever knew.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, obviously after the fact, but groomsmen to the rescue on that one. And then very recently, actually, one of the groomsmen, they were coming from the back. They weren't starting at the front. And I don't know if he went to the bathroom or just I got a phone call. All I know is that he was supposed to be walking up and nobody else was. And all of a sudden the coordinator's like, where is he? Where'd he go? Music's going. And all of a sudden he like beats it and like face all red, runs down the aisle. And the bride was like, what are you doing? So, your groomsmen always there to make things a little bit more interesting. And those photos are priceless because it captures those little memories that people don't see.
Yep. And now there's a few things that are slightly on us and then slightly not on us. This is growing in levels of fun and shenanigans.
With the guys.
You're never going to have this issue with the girls. The guys, there's been two occasions where pants have been dropped. One of them had nothing to do with us, but a very intoxicated young gentleman thought it would be a great idea to pull his pants down for the photo booth.
Yes.
And,
that did not end well. He definitely
didn't end well for him. He was out of there.
Yep. He was definitely kicked out. I think some chairs or bar stools were thrown. Yeah. He was not happy about having to leave that one. And another one, I mean, I don't know how it all happened.
I would have to take a little bit of the responsibility in that there's a certain photo that I've done. It's kind of like, let's mimic the idea of guys taking a leak away from the camera with the groomsmen looking towards the camera in complete embarrassment and utter disdain for his immaturity of the boys.
It's one of those ones like letting him have some fun so you can then, rally them back to do some formal ones. And as we said earlier, there will always be that one groomsman. And he, definitely took it.
I didn't want to see your hairy butt on my, in my viewfinder. And I
surely did not want to see it when I was editing. Photos. So, we can keep clothing on. That would be great. That would be real great. So again, as the photographer directing, like Ryan said, be vigilant with that one who's always trying to push the envelope.
Yeah. So that's the fun stories. There's so many more that are a little bit too inappropriate to share.
Yeah. Or like who are a little too recent. And if people who are listening are like, wait a second, that was our wedding, that we need to put a little bit more time and distance between some of the things that have happened as of late that would maybe have gone perfectly with this episode, but we're going to be kind to our sweet clients. But as we close, announcement. The next episode of CR Conversations, you do not want to miss.
Stay tuned. Come back.
We have a very big announcement to make. So set your clocks. 2 weeks from today, we have a really awesome surprise for you all. And until then, cheers.
We hope today's episode was insightful. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review, as this helps others find us. If you have any questions or comments on topics you'd like to hear us unpack, please send those to podcast@crphotos.org. Lastly, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, where we can be found at C_R_conversations, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a post.